Hi everyone, I'm Ben, and this is the Board Game Blueprint. On this week's episode, we're going to go over one of my prototypes in a segment that is called Prototype Progress. I'm going to give a brief overview of one of the designs that I'm currently working on, and go over some of the feedback that I received from some awesome and much appreciated playtesters from the Stonemaier Games Design Day. So we're going to set up the game, give a brief explanation of how the play works, and then talk a little bit more about what the feedback was from the playtesters, what they were maybe looking for more of, and perhaps a couple things that I kind of did right. Hopefully this video will provide some more insights into the kinds of things that players expect, or maybe what feels good for players to have, so that you can hopefully take a little shortcut about how to incorporate this fun into your design from the get-go. Let's go check it out and see what they came up with. Let's see what we can do with a little bit of a shaky camera. I'll try to even the bumpiness out a little bit in post, but we'll make do with what we can. So this design is a cooperative game where all players will be working together against an AI system to hopefully win. How they'll be doing that is by completing the mission cards that are kind of listed up top there, by collecting resources around the map and trying to evade the patrol, or those kind of white pawns with the numbers on them. So on a turn, a player might be able to place one of their workers onto a starting area, move that worker around the board, collect the resource, and then allocate it to one of the missions at the top there. And this sort of play would be really neat. As you can see, when you accomplish a mission, you'll move 2 tracks to the right. You'll be advancing them as you go. And in the case of accomplishing that first one, you would move both the triangle and the diamond track 1 space. So, as we can kind of see, the more times you complete the missions, the closer you'll get to the win condition, which is getting that gold cube to the red side. However, there are kind of bumps along the way, including event cards that'll be drawn, and then actually docking the gold cube back an extra space arbitrarily for the time being. So the playtesters had a couple things to say, one of which was that when they were playing, it didn't feel necessarily like they were cooperating together. There wasn't much interaction for the players to be able to help each other out, and I think that's a huge call to try and improve that in some way. One great suggestion was kind of asymmetric powers, or just more ways to interact with the board. Let's say that after each player's turn, these pawns would be moving around the board as per a kind of police patrol card. So this card would tell you which number pawns would move and to which shape they would go to. So in this example, all 2 pawns would move towards the closest circle that was in the direction of a player that was on the board. So this 2 would move to this circle, and the other 2, I think pictured off camera, would move in a similar fashion. So that in itself also kind of caused a little bit of frustration for the players, in that one move, if it were, let's say, an X, would possibly move this pawn 4 spaces away. And that jump was so unexpected and unable to be prepared for that it caused a little bit of anxiety across the players. So that was kind of one fix to address. And another thing was actually just even getting the players onto the board themselves. What I'm going to do is pull up a player board here, see what we have, and kind of what the idea was with this. So we can see that there are kind of 6 different spots that the discs can be allocated, and the original idea was that players would have 6 discs only to both attribute or contribute to these actions as well as to the board. So a fixed supply, meaning that hopefully, or that the idea to have the decisions be very tough to make for the players. What ended up happening was that the players would kind of put as many pawns or discs onto the collect action as they could, and move to any of those kind of building spaces to obtain the resources and put them onto those missions. It brought about it kind of made the game very stale in that sort of sense. And so one kind of suggestion to fix that was to, instead of having all these numbers for players to crunch in their heads, consolidating these actions, making them maybe one action but a fixed amount or fixed strength for each one, and allowing players to decide how many times they wanted to use those actions each turn. I know that's kind of throwing a lot at you without giving too much more of the gameplay, but it stemmed from an excellent podcast on the Board Game Design Lab about removing math from games. I'll go ahead and link that in the description below, and just allowing players to jump into the fun right away. A simple other thing to kind of experiment with was just the location of these everything. The spaces were right now very even, and that kind of made things a little boring on their own as well. So there were a couple calls to try to make the board even asymmetric and allow maybe different regions of the setting to be different per different locales. To kind of further discuss those police moving pawns, to up the ante, perhaps instead of after every round, that is when all players have taken a single turn, and then them activating once and becoming pretty much just moving statues in the sense that they do not move very much at all, increasing the frequency that they would move by having one go after every player's turn, similar to the epidemic cards, I believe they were called, in Pandemic, and just making things a lot harder for the players, forcing them to, again, work together. There's a lot that can be done for this game, including, instead of resources being directly added to the missions, incorporating a pick up and deliver mechanic where players have to then escape back off into their secret hideouts and complete the missions that way. Another really cool idea that stemmed from this was that maybe these missions were quadrant specific to the board. So let's say that kind of this top left corner where yellow currently is where that first mission could only be accomplished. Players who had collected that resource would have to then carry it off into one of these hubs to escape off the board and place or devote their resources to. In the very first version of the game, each player would have their own 2 unique missions that they would have to complete. And we might even kind of go back into that direction just to illustrate the cyclical nature of design. There's really no right way, and as long as you get to what's fun, it doesn't really matter. And one more idea about these tracks was to make them unique. Perhaps some of them could be completed a certain way, and that would allow you then to perhaps maximize or have each player maximize towards whatever mission type suited their strengths with those asymmetric player powers mentioned earlier. Even the missions themselves, instead of being so even, always 4 ingredients and 2 tracks moving up, they could be more asymmetric themselves. And so just trying to incorporate more variety into the game and more strategic choices would hopefully provide a more enjoyable experience. The track down here was the original round track. So before, or I should say in the first iteration of the game, there would be only 6 rounds for the players to attempt to increase that gold cube to the red section to win the game. We can also see that during the rounds, more of those police pawns would be added to the board. Players would receive an extra disc or 2 throughout the game, and a different type of vet card would need to be resolved. With the changes that have been discussed, probably that round system is going to be pretty outdated and removed from the game. We'll have to think of some kind of end game condition. Maybe there is a card at the bottom of that mission deck that tells us when the game is over, or perhaps it is when a certain number of missions have been completed and trying to see whether or not that was enough for the players to succeed. After all of their hard work slogging through my framework of a design, I'm really excited to get back into this one and incorporate a lot of the things that will hopefully make players feel like they have more agency, that there's going to be more tension in the game, and that they can just enjoy themselves all the way through. If you liked this episode, please give this video a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe to our channel for future videos about topics such as components from the Game Crafter, events that are centered around the board game hobby, and more. I'm Ben. This has been another episode of the Board Game Blueprint, and together, let's build something great.